Anyway, we're running a few minutes late here. So, on July 17th, we're going to call the San Carlos Estates Water Control District meeting is now called to order. The quorum is present. Roll call: Chairman Jim Bradford, Vice Chair Jennifer Finazzo, Supervisor John SCEWCD. We have Chris Lawson on our Secretary Treasurer on the phone. Audrey, she is our new manager. For those of you who don't know it, we'll try to repeat that a number of times so that you continue to remember. Ron Edenfield and Mr. Pringle are present. Ron's our engineer and Mr. Pringle's our mechanic. Does everybody have their packets? Okay, everybody has their packets. We're going to try to put, using the television screens, the agenda when we get to that. Different items that we're talking about will be presented so that you can see them. See how it works out. We enjoy any input from you guys on what we're doing with this. John SCEWCD is going to speak on our new web page that we're doing, and that's supposed to be really user-friendly for everybody, and I hope that works out well. He's put a lot of work into that. This time, I think we're going to turn it over to Mr. Edenfield. He's going to give us an engineer's report, and you don't have to turn around and watch him. He's actually probably going to walk to the back of the room where he's going to talk partially, maybe not at all. So,
Back of the room.
Yeah, might want to go up there where the pastor's at and make sure things get done the way he wants it done.
Why don't I go ahead and dispense with the
Would you like a microphone, please?
status of, go ahead and dispense with the permit report. We currently have 14 open permits under review. 2 new permits came in this week after the first 2 that came in, I think, in about 6 weeks. So it's been mighty slow, and it's suddenly a little upturn in activity. We closed out 2 permits, and we conducted 16 inspections since the last board meeting. But a few weeks ago, Supervisor Jim had asked me to put together a little PowerPoint presentation, and I'm coming back to the back of the room so I can actually see the screen without squinting. But it's a little bit about the history of water in Southwest Florida. How we got here, what we're trying to accomplish, and what the state is dictating that we should or should not do with respects to that. As that's coming up, there we go. Everybody may have heard some discussion at some point or another about things like MS4s and NPDES and TMDLs and VMAPs. Go ahead and make some notes, please, because there is going to be a test, okay? And I'm going to try to run through it pretty quickly.
Can you all see the screens okay?
Yeah.
We can dim the lights if you cannot.
There we go. Just do the arrow. A little bit of what we're going to talk about is a little bit of a history, a few acronyms, a little alphabet soup,
Is that
and
good?
then in the end a little bit about water. Historically, most of Florida, particularly South Florida, if you, why are we not seeing that up there? Won't we hit, come up your slideshow? Double click here.
This is all new, and we're actually using you as guinea pigs as we practice.
Forgot the popcorn.
We forgot the popcorn and the cokes.
Mr. Chairman, while he's working on that, I
Yes.
can make an announcement.
Go right ahead.
Yes, sir. We did properly
in the meeting location, in the news press, and we noticed the meeting change for, this meeting, for, this meeting, and, August the 21st, and the August the 21st meeting still. That will get us through the same time period that we previously noticed. And then, Mr. Chairman, if you want to continue to have, or if the board wants to continue to have the board meetings in this location, then we can do the notice for the next 12 months. But we are noticed for this month and next month, as this being the new location.
The arrangements have been made.
Okay, all right, we can take care of that.
Are you ready for Mr. Edfield?
We seem to be having a little bit of trouble. Why don't we wait till we get it worked out, we can carry on with the meeting, and at whatever point in time that we get it operational, I'll bounce back here to do it.
Okay, we can come back. We can come back to you if you, would like. That'll be fine. Okay, Audrey, you're up.
So, this month was a little busy when it comes to, finding companies that are willing to give us some bids on taking care of our swales and our ditches. So with multiple pages, and I have umpteen reports from different companies, I was able to make contact with one particular company who did submit, a fairly decent bid to take care of this, work. And I presented that to the, board members for their approval.
Yeah, Audrey, I guess I have the dead mic here. Anyway, what she's referring to is all the culvert pipes in the subdivision. We put bids out for that. She's talking about how she's done that, just wait, and then we've got an extremely great price, and they're supposed to start work on that toward the end of this week or the first of next week. And that's gonna be every pipe in our subdivision all at one time.
I have my own. And, also, I wanted to bring up one of the dilemmas that we're facing in the near future. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the adjacent construction, aside from Stillwell, and it covers from Cockleshell over to Paradise. All of that new construction, and I have some pictures up there. I don't know if, Pastor, if you're able to get that up on that USB. Of the development, and basically what that means is when you put up all these houses, you have more rooftops, and nowhere for water to be absorbed. So right now, when I do get those pictures up, I will show them to you, just to give you a scope of what is going to happen, because that drainage is literally going to come over into our swales. Here we go. So that is actually Stillwell Park. And if you move through them slightly, Pastor, you can, oh, wrong way.
It's got a mind of its own, right?
Oh, boy.
Well, anyway, let's try to keep moving.
Yeah. So anyway, there are multiple pictures up there that show all of the construction that is going to impact our swales, especially during the rainy season. So I took enough pictures of that. You can keep going, Pastor, good job. There you go. This is over near Maddox, and then at the end of Maddox, if you take a right down to Paradise, and you follow that all the way down, literally all of the roadway is just full of the silt fences that are up, all of the trees that are taken down, all of the dirt that's being delivered. You'll see that they are literally just going to be completely rooftops. And all of that water is going to go and affect us.
Why are they not, well, are,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing I wanted to say as she's ending that is that thanks to the city of Bonita Springs and the water management districts being the city of Bonita Springs, I wish I could say that we had a lot to do with it, but we only got about that much to do with it. they have managed to drop the number of buildings over there from 6 and 700 down to 250, because the rest is all being for water retention areas and for the drainage and stuff that they're going to need for those homes. For those of you who didn't know, that property was already pre-zoned before the golf course for the 600 to 700 homes. The city of Benita would have had very little to do to keep them from actually building all of those units if it wasn't for the water control that they have to manage and prevent them from doing that. And that was their means for being able to do it. So just wanted to let you know that.
So the city is asking us to pay,
City's not asking us for anything.
but they're draining into.
Okay, what we're doing, and we're gonna get to that directly, and we're not that far along yet. So if you can hold that till then, we'll try to answer the question.
Mr. Ed, yes, sir. You're back up.
Do we have slides?
That's the best.
Pastor, we good? Let me, while he's doing that, let me chime in a little bit about this development. The entire golf course was bought by, I believe, Collier Enterprises, Baron Collier. The city in turn negotiated with them and wound up purchasing about half the real estate to turn it into a regional stormwater project. It's being funded by, partially funded, or was to have been partially funded by the HMGP program from IRMA several years ago. They subsequently dropped that funding because of some contractual issues, but nonetheless, the property is, about 50% of the property is going into, become lakes. And the balance will be residences for the purposes of, development for Baron Collier. I believe it's Baron Collier or Collier Enterprise, I can't remember which, but.
You're the one for the whole building.
I think it's the builder, the developer is one of the barons, I'm not sure. And it will,
Baron Collier.
is it Baron Collier? Yeah. They'll be discharging into the culverts downstream of our weirs, at the very south end of Stillwell. So the discharge actually will not be coming into our property. There is, you may have seen the land clearing that's taking place about midway up and down Stillwell. That is going to be a stormwater pond that possibly will connect to our canal. But none of the development around that property will discharge into that stormwater pond. It's basically it's a surge tank. As water fills up into the Stillwell Canal, it will stream over into that stormwater pond, reach a certain level, and then as water flows over the weir at Stillwell, the water will come back out of that pond through the Stillwell Canal. So there will be no, at least according to the plans that I reviewed, there will be no flow from the development. It will be a surge tank, again, it's the best analogy I can think of, for our system. The reason they're having to do that is it makes the model numbers work. When you sit down and look at the runoff coming from our development, the flow that's coming into downstream of Stillwell, you run all those things through a numeric model in order to minimize any impact to 1/10 of a foot, which is about 1.5 inches, or less. That reservoir, that surge tank had to be there. Otherwise, their model didn't work and they wouldn't have qualified for any of the FEMA money because they would have created a problem. But because of that surge tank, the model worked and they don't have an adverse impact on us. So, just wanted to clarify that.
That was really turned up. So, but we already have 3 to 4 pipes coming in from Maddox.
Correct.
And so they will impact the Stillwell Canal.
Correct. Yes.
And they will flow, those will flow in too.
Yes.
And the design of our drainage system on Stillwell is to go back into our underground pipe system, which in turn takes the water back to the front of the subdivision.
Have we evaluated during their 2.5 year construction period, while we have rainy season, even though they have the silt fences, have we evaluated how much impact that might have on these pipes that are still going into the canal, sand, dirt, things like that?
In theory, and in accordance with government regulations, with the silt fence in place, there should be none coming into us. And I think practically speaking, we all know better than that, and that's part of what I'll be talking with you about here in a few moments. There we go. In theory, there should be no adverse impact. So, and by signing and sealing of the documents, the engineer for the project has said, no, I will not cause an adverse, this development will not cause an adverse impact.
What's adverse mean? What does adverse mean?
Adverse? I'm not sure what.
Well, I know what the word means.
Contrary,
It means they don't wanna pay for anything on our side.
So if there's,
essentially it says that what they're doing won't cause us a problem.
is there water coming from theirs to ours?
Like I said, their water will be draining into the canal system downstream of the Mariah and the Stillwell Weir. It will not be draining into us, not any more so than it already does.
Except as Jim says, there are pipes going from Cockleshell under.
I'm referring to the new development. The new development. We already know about the existing pipes that are there, and we're addressing those with the city. But I think the pasture's ready, so why don't I do this, and then we can come back to that. How we doing, Robert? Next one. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is one I was talking about earlier. This is a sort of a prehistoric graphic of what the state of Florida looked like. And as you can see, we get runoff, not here in Lee County, but down into the southern tip of the state of Florida from all the way up around the Orlando area. It's bounded by the East Coast Ridge and the Highlands Ridge, drains into Lake Okeechobee, with the next one, and then on further south. So a drop of water could hit somewhere up in Orlando and find its way a year or so later down in Florida Bay. It's a pretty good ride for a drop of water. Well, that's a long ways off. Some of the history of some of the regulations that we're dealing with today go back to the 1850s with the Swamp and Overflow Act. We had some major hurricanes in 1926 and 28, and then subsequently another hurricane in 1947. And the graphic on the right, if you can see it, if you've got your glasses on, that's one of the earliest maps known. It's in 1860s, 1850s, and it was commissioned by the Honorable Jefferson Davis, Secretary of War. So it's a pre-Civil War mapping of what we thought Florida looked like at the time. It's actually fairly accurate, but the telling tale is to the right of Lake Okeechobee, the Everglades extended well up into what is now Martin and St. Lucie County. For Southwest Florida, we had a fellow named Diston that came in here in about 1881. He bought 4 million acres, 25 cents an acre, pretty good deal. And his purpose for buying that land was to improve it for purposes of development. Next one. In 1881, he brought in a dredge, the SCEWCD River, and dredged it from Fort Myers all the way to east of LaBelle and then on to Lake Okeechobee. In doing so, and Richard will be familiar with this, I'm not sure anyone else might. Have you ever heard of Lake Flirt? Yeah, Lake Flirt was the only waterfall in southwest Florida, and it existed several miles east of LaBelle, at least until Mr. Diston got his dredge on it. So at that point, we had the SCEWCD River actually did not connect to Lake Okeechobee. It connected up to Harns Marsh. Not Harns Marsh. Mr. Pringle, help me out there. Lake Hinkpachee. Thank you very much, sir. It did accept water from the northern part of the Everglades, all the way up into the Kissimmee area and Orlando, but it only received it during high storm conditions with a lot of sheet flow and overflow from Lake Okeechobee area into Lake Hickory. This is just a photograph of a dredge back, it's not distance dredge, a little later than that, but this may have been one of the canals through the Big Cypress, I'm not certain. Then we had Napoleon Bonaparte Broward. I'm certain he was a fine governor and did great things, but he's the gentleman that had Melaleuca aerially seeded over the Everglades for the purpose of drying them out. And the goal being is that we were going to dry it out and create the empire of the Everglades, and one day there'd be millions of people that lived there. Didn't quite work out that way, but I wanted to include him in there for his notable efforts. Again, I mentioned earlier the hurricanes of 26 and 28, 2,500 died, millions in damage. This was really the beginnings of water management in South Florida. Okay? The public outcry was substantial to the point where South Bay, Lewiston, small towns around the Lake Okeechobee were heavily impacted. And that led to creation of the Everglades Drainage District with a canal to the east coast of St. Lucie, the west coast of Fort Myers, and then several canals out to Miami through the Everglades agricultural area. In the 30s, we began the Hoover Dike system. Everybody that's driven by Lake Okeechobee seen the Hoover Dike. It is originally was a pile of sand on top of muck. A few years ago, the Army Corps of Engineers went in and put a grout curtain that is somewhere on the orders of 50 to 60 feet tall from the top of the dike all the way down to the first rock layer, and effectively sealed up that dike that had leaked ever since it was built. Next slide. 47, 2 hurricanes, 12 inches fell in 30 minutes. You can imagine what it would have done to us here. And next. Let me back up one. Back up. At about the same time in 1930, just prior to this, the state of Florida had already taken action to create what's known as Chapter 298. It was actually first written in the early teens and then had been modified, had been amended in the, I think it was 1943, there was a substantial amendment, and it's been amended several times since then. But Chapter 298 is part of Florida statute that governs what we do as a water control district. So it's relative to understand the time frame of when that happened relative to the storms and the public outcry that was occurring at those times. The Central and South Florida Flood Project came on board in the late 40s and established, I think it was the first national park not the first national park, but the Everglades National Park at that same time. It also was kind of the beginning of the end for what was historically the Everglades, with the development of the water conservation areas and the Everglades agricultural area. It's just a quick snapshot of man's best efforts to tame nature. This is when they were creating the Kissimmee River Canal. Once upon a time, the Kissimmee River had been a 90-mile meandering water body that ran from the Orlando area into Lake Okeechobee, northwest side of Lake Okeechobee. In the 60s, they began the dredge project, which took them many years to complete, and almost immediately they realized that they needed to go back and restore it, and here's just a snapshot of the restoration here. I know this really isn't germane to us, but it's the bigger picture of how it affects us. And we now have a system of canals, and the purpose of this slide is, if you see the Caloosahatchee River that runs from Okeechobee almost due to the left, due west, out to Fort Myers, You'll see the blue line, that's the Flushatchie River Canal. And then sort of southwest of that, you'll see the Golden Gate Canal system. What you don't see are any canals in Lee County of any note. Next one. This is just a point of reference. We've all identified with some of the land preservation that's occurred throughout the state of Florida. There was once a stated goal of having 25% of the state in public hands. I think that's very close to being accomplished, but it's the photo on the left for the pre-1900 wetlands line kind of shows you just how much was historically wetlands versus how much we have today. Point of this slide is, if you look there, the yellow is Estero Bay watershed. That's where San Carlos Estates Water Control District is located, down towards Venue Springs, of course. These are designations by the state of Florida for the various watersheds that make up Southwest Florida. The land use in the year 2000, not that many years ago, yellow, the lighter colors being the intensive urban, and a quick snapshot to see on the next slide. By 2050, not too far into the future, you see just how much widespread, how widespread the intensity has gone, including down towards the bottom of the colored graphic, which is the area where San Carlos Estates is located. Okay, here's where the fun starts. Now we've gone through water and how we got here today. We're going to talk about the impaired water rule, which is a state of Florida regulation. It's overseen by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and its purpose is to evaluate aquatic life use, biological assessment, toxicity, nutrients, primary contact and recreation, fish and shellfish consumption, drinking water use, and reasonable assurance. And I put reasonable assurance in there. I'll bore you just a moment longer with the definition of reasonable assurance. According to Chapter 62, 701, 200, paragraph 94, reasonable assurance means the existence of a substantial likelihood, although not an absolute guarantee, that the proposed activity will be successfully implemented, and the proposed activity and applicant will comply with applicable agency rules, laws, orders, and permit conditions. It does not mean proof that a facility will not fail. Richard will have to talk about that later. Again, state of Florida's through the IWR, the Impaired Waters Rule. They divided the state up into all the various watersheds, and they rotate on a 5-year basis. And phase one of that's preliminary assessment, where they go in and do an evaluation of the water quality in the region. Then they put together a planning list and a monitoring list of the items that they're going to be monitoring for. Phase two, which is the second year, each phase is a year long. They do the monitoring, get the data, do the assessments, and then they wind up on a list. It's either a verified list or an unverified list. Phase three, they analyze the data and they develop a TMDL, which is total maximum daily load. We'll talk about that in a minute. Once the TMDL is developed, then they go in effectively, they prepare a basin management action plan, which is the plan that the state of Florida is going to implement with local government cooperation to make sure that they meet the TMDL. All right, and the implementation. This is just a quick look at the phases. You got phases 1 through 5, again, each phase being about a year. Our area, the lower west coast, is in group 1, and we are right now in phase 5. So we'll be going back into phase 1 next year, where we're going to have to, the entire basin will go through a reassessment, see if it succeeded, see if we've accomplished the goals, and then they'll go through that 5-year cycle of assessment, monitoring, VMAP, and then implementation. Next slide. We're in the Spring Creek WIBID. Anybody know what a WIBID is? The Water Basin ID. Like I said, there will be a test. 3258H3, that's the state designation for the watershed that we're in. We're in Group 1, Cycle 5, part of Everglades West Coast. And the impaired water rule parameter for which we are notoriously guilty of is dissolved oxygen. Category 4D, assessment study, it's under study. Dissolved oxygen has been a controversial assignment for listing a basin as being impaired, predominantly for the reason that most of the surface flow and most of the rivers and streams and creeks in this part of the world is groundwater flow. Groundwater is notoriously low in oxygen because it just does not have a source of oxygen. So it is a bit controversial that the state is designating Spring Creek as impaired for dissolved oxygen, when again, primarily its source of water is groundwater. It's under study. Just a quick map to show you where we're at, Everglades West Coast, a little baby blue area. To the southwest, we're managed by the South District of DEP. Okay, TMDL. Sorry, Richard. Too many damn lawyers. No, just kidding.
That is true.
That definition of that acronym came out the day after the acronym hit the streets. So it came out really quick. John, I guess I should apologize to you as well. So, but in any event, the TMDL it establishes, and really the salient point there is the last line. So how you determine the use of the Florida Impaired Water Rule methodology to be the maximum amount of a pollutant loading that can be discharged to a healthy water body without causing impairment. That's really the nexus for their evaluation is we're going to determine how many widgets we can put into this bucket before we turn the bucket bad. So it's a measure of whatever pollutant that they're concerned about, how much will that healthy system be able to assimilate and deal with before it starts to have trouble and starts to shift in its water quality conditions. The FDEP uses the impairment list to create that list of impaired water bodies based on the assessments that they do during one of the 5 cycles. Once they develop PMDL for the water body, it makes its way onto an impaired waters list. I'll get back to that in just a moment. But, it's a public process. The development of the VMAP is a public process. They do look to stakeholders to come in and participate and help identify for that impairment for that particular WIBID. Again, WIBIDs are state designations. Every water body in the state of Florida has one. We're all in one. Didn't know it, but we are. And every one of them has been studied. This map is actually a bit dated because if you look at it, our particular WIBID is not shown as being impaired, but this was probably early 2000s, this map I grabbed. I couldn't find a newer one. Today, every one of those is listed as impaired. Maybe one that's not. And again, I'll come back to that. All right. The TMDL process is you go out and impair it, you identify and quantify all the sources, point and non-port, where's the water coming from. We're kind of a target because we're a consolidated area, all using a common drainage system. So there's been some attention paid to San Carlos Estates Water Control District because of that. FGCU has done some studies on that, and for the state. And so I'm expecting that we'll have some discussions on that as we go through the next cycle. Typically, it's got a little hit on it. Typically, they're doing numeric modeling. Most of that modeling is done on spreadsheets. It's not very sophisticated simply because the technology just is not very good, nor is the library of sources. So it's an evolving process that the state has got us all mired in. All right? Okay. With the cycles, every 5 years from this point, Everglades West Coast Basin, we are in Group 1, and those are just a list of some of the basins that you might be familiar with, some of the water bodies that you might be familiar with. Flushetchie River is actually in Group 3 in a different group, considered separate from the Estero Bay. A little bit about a water cycle. I think we've all seen this graphic at some point in time, maybe back in 3rd or 4th grade, but you know, rain comes down, rains hit mountains, mountains drain off the ponds and creeks and streams, and it all winds up back into a larger pond or through either surface flow or groundwater flow. So that's actually in a graphic with a guy, a drop of water on a bicycle, but I couldn't find it, so I was going to share that water cycle with you. Okay. Just a graphic of historic rainfalls, which shows our excesses and our deficits over the course of the last 109 years. I want somebody here to find normal for me. There's no such thing as normal. Normal is a small town in Illinois. Rainfall varies radically year to year to year. There will be short-term cycles. There will be not too many long-term cycles. It looks like maybe 6-7 years was the longest, or 6 years was the longest we had an excess of rainfall in the cycle. So preparing for that is a challenge. Just a point of order, if 100% of the Earth's water was a 100-liter bucket, you'd see about 3 liters were fresh. You'd see about a half a liter was available, and you'd see that about a milliliter, 0.003 liters, is actually usable fresh water. So, the point of that is the reason why we're protecting and why the state is so aggressively pursuing these water quality issues is for that very purpose right there. There's only so much water, and we need to be good stewards of it as we go forward. I know we're burning up a lot of clock. We'll flip through this one. Next one. Let's go ahead and skip through that one and bring it back next time. I just like this with the guy out having fun, but stormwater either runs off, it either infiltrates, or it's absorbed. The runoff is the aspect of our issue with the district. Go ahead next. I'll skip through that one too. Skip through that one. Go ahead and skip through that one. Other point on that is we lose about 45 of the 52 inches a year next that we get. Next 2 seasons, rainy season, 70% of it comes in. Next. Shameless plug for this was an Urban Land Institute award-winning project that turned a Brazilian pepper field into a restored cypress system and water quality improvement project. Next. And just another shot of the Kissimmee River restoration, that shot. And there's a redneck swimming pool. That's a good steward of water right there. So if anybody's got a pickup truck and a plastic liner, then we can have us a swimming party. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ron. Really appreciate the slideshow. One of the things that Ron's trying to do is to bring everybody who doesn't understand what the Water Management District and what it does for Florida is all about, so that we begin to understand and recognize what the importance of our small district is. Thank you again.
So again, what's never addressed in this is that the water that ends up, let's say, to the bay, comes through the Spring Creek, and then our water dumps into that. And so we're accountable for that water, but there's upstream from us. So on my property is the canal, for which there's a 24-inch pipe coming from the Preferred Materials, whatever they're doing over there. And
Hey,
there's,
Dave, we do have a microphone up here, if you would, please, for everybody else.
So that 24-inch pipe is dumping milky water into ours. And so, yeah, the water comes through our property, which is fine, but it seems like financially the buck is stopping with us. We're paying for this, we're paying for all this testing, but that's not fair, right? So I don't know what, so I've seen the county out sampling water in the canal and other people, but I don't know anybody testing the water coming into our canal from Preferred and any of the others. So what I'm saying is all of us are paying for other people's pollution. If there's pollution, it's gonna get caught by our testing. We're gonna be held accountable, we're gonna pay for it. So that, to me, that has to be addressed. That's not fair.
Yeah, one thing I would agree with you on 100% is that we could sure use some help with other people like yourself who might want to participate in going and talking to people about everything. We've been talking to the city of Bonita Springs, but from Mr. Edenfield's help and what he's done, we also find out that the water coming into our system is tested. The water going out of our system is tested. It's tested by Lee County, it's tested by the city of Bonita Springs. FGCU a few years ago had a contract to do some testing on the entire system, which they came up with some reports we don't want to talk about right now, because those things have been somewhat corrected, okay, because of knowing what was wrong. They're getting a handle on it and making our water cleaner and better. But yes, you're right. We have water coming into our system. Is it fair that this few people out here have to pay and maintain the canal system out here? That's what's wrong. But you guys are all voters. You do have a say-so. And, you know, when you stand up and you go talk to the people of the city of Bonita Springs and you get support from other people, then the surrounding communities might need to pay their fair share for this canal system that we have. And they all drain into it. Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff started many, many years ago. And as Ron showed you, even the forefathers of this subdivision could not have foreseen the growth that would eventually be down here. I remember when 41 was 2-lane and covered mostly by water 5 times of the year. But the bottom line is, this was a small subdivision out in the middle of swamp and maybe some farmland. Nobody anticipated I-75 would be there except the state of Florida, let alone Imperial Parkway and the growth all around us. So, yeah. I wanted to, go ahead.
Would you be willing to make a phone call or send an email when you see that water discharging from the plant and it's turbid?
sure.
If you could let us know, then.
I do have some pictures from last year. I can send you
Well,
some.
Yeah, we want to test it.
Yeah,
It
okay.
has to be when it's happening.
Right.
And so we can contact the city and contact the water management district.
So since you asked, what happened last year, the first rain flushed their pond. So if you look on Google Maps, you can see
Mhm.
big
Oh,
pond,
yeah.
right? Okay. And so there was white milky water coming through here, and about, by the time you got to like half a mile, it was clear. So obviously it's settling out.
It's sort of like Loch Ness. We all know she exists, but we gotta see her to believe it. So,
Well, look at the bottom of that canal there. I'm sure you'll find it.
but we can't get the state agency or the local government unless they actually see the water coming out of the pipe. So, so if you
Okay.
give you my card and let me know.
I just wanted to bring you up to date on some of the things that we've been working on since the hurricane happened. And the FEMA projects through the mitigation program that they had they have replaced our gates, they're gonna fund that. So they said, okay, this is all what they've said they're going to do, we've had the meetings, everything's in place. They're gonna replace both of the weirs in our canal system. That comes under an area where those need gates in them. They see a future of preventing flooding and stuff if the gates are put in. So under the mitigation program, they will put in new weirs for us. They replaced all of the signs in our subdivision because any of them that even had a dimple from a bolt being blown in the wind was eligible for being replaced. The rebuilding of the filtration ponds, that's in the works for the future, correct, Ron?
That's one of the projects we're seeking.
And the front one will be in the neighborhood of 10 feet deep, and it'll be a full pond permanently when that occurs, to allow for more settlement from all of the ditch system in our subdivision before it hits the drainage canals. Any of the erosion areas around the outside perimeter roads and stuff, they're going to make repairs for those and fund them. The intention is that even the culverts up at the railroad tracks may get replaced with larger ones to allow there to be no blockage from the debris that flows through the canal system up to those. Then they're funding some ditch and canal cleaning, a minimal amount, but they're gonna fund it. We're working right now on an interlocal agreement with the city of Bonita Springs. That has to do with the storage reservoir next door, and just, I don't know how much you know about this, Jamie, but if we don't enter into this now and get it done, then we'll be like we were with the other areas where nobody was watching and taking care of things, and the pipes got put in. We can't do anything about the past. We can only protect the future, so they have to get our permission to put that pipe in.
Which pipes?
That's the one coming from the big pond they're putting in. And so we will get that done. That'll include an interlocal agreement, which will give us some, hopefully, their participation in cleaning the Stillwell Canal, for instance, instead of the residents of this community having to be burdened by the entire expense of it. Bonita will share in that. The numbers haven't been determined yet. There are some other areas of the canal system that they tentatively have said, we'll work with you on. We have to fine tune that and find out where that's going. There's a few cost sharing projects that they've talked about that might also apply to that. Lee County has received a grant for $1 billion. My understanding is that Bonita Springs has got $600 million of that. Is that correct, or do you know? Okay.
I thought it was 5, but yes.
Pardon?
I thought it was 5, but.
We'll take 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's gonna argue for $100 million?
No, I don't think.
But anyway, in that, that's a HUD grant, which is for housing and stuff, but there's a certain percentage of that that goes for infrastructure for those houses and things that are to be built. That's where we play a role in being able possibly to get some of that money, and we're applying for it. We're also applying for a grant with Lee County, which, again, that's a $20 million grant. This other grant should subsidize the balance of that so that there's no difference in money, and we'll get it all and be able to use that money for projects. We've got a grant we're applying for through the state of Florida, which hopefully will take care of the road project out here in the next 3 to 5 years. That's new. We will have to go to the Florida legislature in the fall and speak and present our case and see what we get from that. Just another one of the things we're working on. You already found out that one of the things we're working on is cleaning all the culverts in the subdivision this year, actually next week, and that's in the wings right now. Audrey has, spearheaded that and brought it to where it's gonna be. We're also gonna start a project next week, hopefully, trimming all of the canal systems and all of the side roads and the, filtration ponds. Yes, ma'am.
Fixing the roads, you're talking about that or St. Cloud?
We're talking about, if you're talking about what I was talking about the grant, that would be all of the roads in San Carlos Estates.
So you just cleaning out the pipes, or you,
Right now, we're only
Digging.
cleaning out the pipes. If you've got about $500,000 you want to contribute, we'll do the rest right now. We don't have that money, but the pipes have to be cleaned out. We also found out that the hyacinth control in our canal system has already been paid for and has been paid for a lot of years. Unfortunately, we never utilized it. It's a phone call to a company that is out by Lee County Mosquito Control in East Fort Myers, and it is actually hyacinth control. We pay for it in our tax dollars, and they're supposed to come take out any of the hyacinths in our canal system. We have always paid for that. We've always paid for it. Nobody knew. It's not pointing a finger at anybody.
on the tax bill?
But these are the things that, right now, this board is just searching out all the avenues we can and talking to a lot of people to try to find out what's funded, what's not funded, where the money's at, and why we have to pay the whole bill, and we're trying not to do that anymore.
So should we start attending the Hyacinth board meetings too now?
Get out there.
I mean, what the hell?
Now, this only requires a phone call, so that's been being taken care of. Audrey's taking care of doing that. Anyway, I was gonna read all the meetings I've attended this year, but they only come to 121, and each one about 2.5 hours, so. With that, I'm done with my report for this evening, and so, is, Chris gonna say anything?
Chris, can you hear us?
I can just be off mute.
See if you can get a mic on that.
Supervisors, can you hear me?
We're working on that, Chris, hang on.
I got feedback.
There you go, we're good. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris, you're on the mic.
Okay, did the board members have any questions about the budget information, not the budget, but the financial information presented for June, July? None of those numbers are current because we do not have the, bank statement yet. So as soon as we have that, then we will bring that back next month for approval. Do you have any questions?
No, I think we've got that, Chris. Did you hear? Well, somebody turned off my mic.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Appreciate your staying on the phone with us. So anyway, she was just saying that the report's not finalized and that we will work on that later on. Let's see, let's go with the attorney's report.
Mr. Chairman, I have several items on the business agenda, resolutions and things like that, but nothing extra to talk about that's not on your agenda, so I'll save my comments for later.
Okay, thank you very much. Amendments.
Do you have
The only amendment we had was that we were not, Brad's, Gallagher's settlement agreement's not on the agenda for tonight, unless you want to wait till we get down to that.
Yes, sir, if we can.
Okay, then we'll leave that where it's at for the moment. And, I do want to give, Chairman Solution just a moment to speak about our, website.
Chairman?
He's been putting a lot of work into that, and
All right, as soon as the good reverend puts the website up. Okay, so this is basically something that myself and Audrey have been working on for months. This is the new website that the I think, Chris, if you can hear me, at the end of the fiscal year, or is it the end of August, we're shutting down the, blog spot, which,
I think she.
the end of the fiscal year.
so at the end of this fiscal year, September 30th, the SCEWCD whatever, the old website, will exist no more, and we now have the new website, which is SCEWCD.org. In addition, the general information email, the SCEWCD@hotmail.com, will be moving over eventually to info@SCEWCD.org. So just, the website is listed on the main sign when you come into St. Carlos Estates. You can see it, www.SCEWCD.org.
It's not on that sign. It's on, it is now.
It is now, but that's the original photo I took, yeah. Anyway, but this is the website. We're compliant now with all the auditors' requests for information. It's a very informative website. You have a lot of drop-down menus that provide you all kinds of historical information about actually the existence of St. Carlos State Water Districts in 1969, et cetera, emails to contact all the board members and the outside service support with engineering and legal. It has our calendar. It has board meetings. It's now a truly compliant website. We're also going to have on there right now, and we'll keep bringing up more information to the website with respect to actually bidding on contracts for the district. So if somebody wants to, they have a new tree cutting service, you want to bid on it, go there, you'll see the request for proposal sample and the scope of work documents, and then bid on it. So a lot of the work that's part of the general maintenance of the district, basically I call it the operating activities of the district, it'd be really nice to see other companies bidding on it, rather than some of the same companies not doing a good job, but it'd be nice to see, are they still competitive? Because really, if you think about it, it's all of our money. All the landowners are paying for this. So if we could save money, that's why, one of the reasons why this website's up there, to have a formal bidding information source that people can go and do some research. Other than that, if anybody has comments, we have a comment section on the website. We have a section there for news, right? Just general neighborhood news. There's a section there like what's going on in the neighborhood. You know, we're going to have a garage sale, different things in the neighborhood. You'll find that as well. So go to the website, enjoy it. It's a lot of work. I feel it's much more informative, a much easier website to get around on.
Is it up now?
Yes, it's been up for a month.
Okay, I got one last thing I'd like to say. Go ahead. Chris, did you have something?
Yes, I can do that. Don, where is the permit application on the website? I had someone who was trying to locate it, and even I can find it either. So I drafted them back to the old website, and they were able to get it from there, but where is the permit application and all the information regarding use connection permits located on the new website?
Beats me. We look forward today. I was in conversation with Carolyn and Richard's office, and we searched all over the new website. Couldn't find that information. It is still on the blog spot, and we do have, in my conversation with Carolyn, we have updated the forms slightly, and she has a new form with some additional, an update on from the legal perspective. So we've got, Carolyn is going to review the updates that we have posted on Blogspot, integrate them with the updates from
And then we'll move them
legal.
over.
Then we'll move them over.
Okay, so that answers your question, Chris. Once they're updated, we'll move them over.
When we get inquiries about the permitting, we're still pointing them towards Blogspot. Okay. And
But Chris, to answer your question, one of the issues is Intermedia that moved everything over, obviously did not move that over. So we'll work on it, okay?
We'll get it done.
and actually, it would be good not to move it over until we.
Until you clean it up, yes. once it's cleaned up, you let me know, then we, either myself or Audrey can upload it.
Okay, I got something else I'd like to talk about. It really doesn't have, it has a very small portion to do with the water district, but it's a new business that's moved into our neighborhood. A few of you asked me questions before we started tonight. I want to remind you, this water board's job is not private land. The only thing we have jurisdiction over is the water district's ditches, roads, and whatever drainage systems that are out here is what our job is. But we do have a sign, a lit business sign on water management district property. So that is an issue that needs code enforcement to deal with.
I'm on it.
Okay, it's on the end of, Melanie Lane, right-hand side, about 3/4 of the way down.
On the right, yes.
I don't know if we should bring up what the business is or not. Mike, did you want to say anything? You asked me before we got started. If you don't, then we'll just drop it and keep going. I guess we're going. Okay.
Well, it seems to be, if you want to speak, then you'll need to use the mic to get up.
Just make it brief, okay?
Yeah. It appears that it is a gay brothel.
Can you be more specific?
They have a web page where you can swim nude and you can use their sex swing and you can drink and party. They have certain items there for sale, if you're interested. But it's something that should not be happening in our neighborhood.
As a private citizen, I'm gonna help you out a little bit. They got overnight stays, they got tours you can take from there on boats and stuff.
They have drugs that relax your anal glands, so it's for easy penetration.
Okay, I think.
Okay. But it is something that should not be in our neighborhood, and we really don't know how to remove this.
Well,
It's drainage.
we will do our part on the signs.
Drainage.
There's parking signs out front.
Yes.
Along with a big.
Neon sign.
Well, it's not actually, I don't think it's neon, but they got background lighting behind their lettering.
Yeah, I can get you an address. Sure.
I would bet you somebody can pull it up on their phone and give you an address here in a minute. It's got a lot of pages.
So what's the violation?
For us, just the sign. We don't have any jurisdiction over private property.
Or any
Right.
parking that occurs in the district's right of way.
Well, that's the issue. They have a sign posted on there, 15-minute parking while you check in. So, so anyway, let's move on. You know, we do have to have something interesting once in a while to talk about here. Okay, public input, I think we just had that, 3-minute limit, and we got within that. Okay. No. Okay, we're gonna move on.
You know, also they have security cameras right next to the road also, pointing north and south.
But if the camera's in the right of way, if it's on their
Yes.
property.
Yes,
If the
they
camera's
are.
in the right of way, they can't have it. If it's on the
Cameras are
property, that's
right
fine.
next to the road, right next to the road.
Okay, nothing can exist.
We need some new cameras for our back gate, maybe we can grab them. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, you can public input on the businesses.
I did. I'll do it again. Public input on business agenda items. Third call. No. Moving on. Business agenda items required action, meeting minutes approval, 6/19/23. John?
Hold on, let me have one
Can I make a
question.
couple of questions about the minutes?
hearing it was on Tuesday.
No, we're actually, we're past public input, but I will listen to you. Go ahead, make it quick.
Two quick things. One is, in the heat of the battle last month, there was a lot of statements being made, and, particularly Mr. Gallagher was referring to his illegal uses on that property. And then it was, somebody said, Mr. Flucci said, something illegal again. We wanted to make sure Mr. Gallagher didn't do something illegal again, quote. So, I reached out to Mr. Gallagher, and I was informed that he was never cited by the city. So, I would just like us to respect our neighbors here. If in fact he's a scofflaw and he's violating, then say it, let's have it out. If he's not, please.
I think we've made a statement from the board, especially from the chair, and I'm gonna make this for the board, and if a board member has a disagreement, we do not have jurisdiction. If a board member has a personal opinion about something, that's up to them. From this board, our boundaries end at the water districts. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just simply saying, we have no jurisdiction and we don't determine what use he's having of his land. We don't care what he does on his private
Well,
land.
except he wrote a letter saying that he do care, but.
Who did? Did we write
The
a
district
letter?
wrote a letter.
On the roadway,
We
not
wrote
on
a
his
letter
property.
saying that we believed he had made, allegedly, had made illegal uses of his property and had used the district roadway for access for those alleged illegal uses.
Right, so that was 6 months ago, in which time, I don't think, Mr. Gallagher's not a liar. If that's true, then it should have been known by you that that was not true. You left.
Mr. Nagy, excuse me, please. I don't mind listening to you, but we're not discussing Mr. Gallagher at this moment in time.
So
You asked if you could make, I let you go back to making to the public agenda items, and there's limited 3 minutes, and you haven't used that up yet.
Well, you've been
But
interrupting me, so I'm just asking you to not make false statements against my neighbors. And that happened. Fair?
we agree with you.
One more thing. Misstatements regarding perimeter roads. So when referring to Mr. Gallagher's stone surface, Mr. Bradford said this property actually belongs to the water control district and the people of the subdivision. Mr. SCEWCD said that Gallagher would go down Mariah to get to his property. Since I own property that has a similar right-of-way, I just want to make it clear that these rights-of-ways, you own a right-of-way on a private property owned by a landowner. And Mr. Gallagher's lawyer is here, so he can defend. I'm telling you, I own that property. You are totally entitled to do your work, to drain the swamp, and to maintain the roadbed, to do the maintenance of that. That's what you're allowed to do, nothing more. So, do not invite other people onto my property. That's for me to do, okay? We've had this discussion before, so I can't leave this. You continue to make statements suggesting, and it's on the website, I respectfully submit, but you should take down the website comments suggesting people can access my property with your permission. Your permission means nothing on my property, any more than I can send somebody to drink beer out of your refrigerator. My property, my permission. Your property is yours. That's it. And you can laugh, I know. You think we're all a bunch of, yeah.
No, not everybody.
Okay, are we ready to move on?
I have that
Thank you
address.
for your discussion.
That address is, 23231.
Thank you.
Can we get one addition to the agenda? There was a discussion last meeting.
Is Chris still on?
Yeah.
There was a discussion at during the engineer's report at the last meeting about conducting a survey to locate culverts and set grades and so forth. But there was never a motion, at least not in the minutes. Was that taken up as a motion, Chris, or?
No motion, no motion was made.
Okay.
Authorized that to be done.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up, as I didn't know couldn't recall whether a motion was made or not, and, perhaps ask the board if they would consider it at this meeting.
I think we have to figure out how to fund that.
Okay.
We need to know an approximate kind of money that it's gonna cost, so that we'll know what kind of numbers.
We'll get authorized to go get budgets, go get proposals.
We need a motion for that? Just to get prices on the project?
Not to get prices, no,
Okay.
sir, but we'll need to make sure that before any contracts are let, as we go through the right competitive selection process, because I think those are, you're talking about surveying services, would be professional services, and those have to go through a competitive selection process.
We'll be clear on those authorized to do that.
Going back to A, meeting minutes approval. 6/19/23. Need an aye?
Aye.
Second.
Motion carries. Financial report approval, 7/31/23, bills and preliminary financial reports as of 7/17/23.
Aye.
Second.
Aye, motion carries. Gallagher settlement agreement.
Okay, here's the legal and I don't have a motion for the minutes.
Make a motion for
The minutes?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then,
I second.
Motion carries.
And then the treasurer's, the financial report.
We did the same thing.
Okay.
Financial report was the same. I second.
Supervisor's selection.
Thank
Make
you.
the motion.
And we are recording this, Chris, so.
Video.
Okay, Gallagher settlement agreement, anything you wanna talk about?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The matter of Mr. Gallagher's use of the district's right-of-way, there have been some discussions ongoing between me and Mr. Gallagher's attorney concerning the terms of the settlement agreement after the last board meeting, when there was a substantial amount of discussion at the board meeting about Mr. Gallagher's rights and the district's rights pursuant to the district's right-of-way easement that overlays and governs certain rights and use and ownership authority over the district's right-of-way. So there are underlying fee ownership interests that all the property owners own in the district, but those are subject to the bundle of rights of the district as reflected in your easement, that is created by the 1969 judicial decree that created the district and that created your rights, and then also the final judgments that were entered when the bond approvals were given by the court as well, which also recognized the district's bundle of rights, easement rights, that overlay and actually control to, in some instances, the use of property. So, as we know in Florida, with Florida law, there's fee ownership interest, and that is the initial bundle of rights, and then those bundle of rights can be modified through the creation of easements, and that's what's happened here. So your easement rights govern in certain instances the owner's rights under the fee ownership. So that bundle of rights that the district has with regard to the use of Mariah Lane and the improvement of Mariah Lane and the use of Mariah Lane for access purposes has been further discussed with the attorney for Mr. Gallagher.
We are not in a matter of litigation. We do not have the authority to go into an executive session. And so what I'm going to suggest to you this evening is that the board authorize one of the board members to be the spokesperson and the initial decision maker for the board to work with me to finish the negotiations so we can finally get this wrapped up, to finish the negotiations with Mr. Gallagher and his attorney as to Mr. Gallagher's use of the district's right-of-way easement. And you can do that by board action. It would be a motion to authorize me to finish the negotiations and to authorize one of the board members to direct me.
Can we make that a combined motion?
Yes, sir. That can all be together.
Motion on the floor to allow you to finish the negotiations along with, John SCEWCD as our representative from the board. And I understand you will contact all of us and make us aware of what's going on along the way.
Yes, sir. I'll keep everyone updated, but by this motion, you would be authorizing Supervisor SCEWCD to direct me and essentially make the decisions on the settlement on the settlement agreement terms.
That's the motion.
Okay.
A second, third, second, third.
Motion carries.
Wait a second.
I can't second myself.
I know, you did, I seconded it.
Yeah.
Well, Supervisor Bradford made the motion.
Okay.
And Jennifer seconded.
Supervisor
seconded.
seconded the motion and it passed.
Okay.
So then we'll proceed with the trying to get the settlement agreement terms wrapped up. And I'll take my direction from Supervisor.
Okay, moving on down. State of Florida Card Purchasing Program Resolution. Chris, I believe. Chris, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, if you didn't hear me, State of Florida Card Purchasing Program Resolution.
Okay, Richard,
Yes, ma'am.
brought the resolution to the board to, make a formalize the credit card use that's be adopted in the policy last month and had previously agreed in the November meeting to enter into the program with, Credit Florida and Bank of America. So this is just adopting that resolution.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have that resolution here. You discussed this at the last board meeting and gave me direction to prepare the resolution. It is a resolution that authorizes and also controls, lays out the parameters for the district's purchasing or credit card usage. It authorizes the execution of the necessary purchasing or credit card agreements and the other documentation by the district for the acquisition of district credit cards. There are several recitals in the resolution. One recital indicates that the district's use of purchasing cards, or hereinafter sometimes referred to as credit cards, provides the district with the ability to effectively and efficiently make small delegated purchases for the benefit of the district, whereas the district utilizes credit cards that may be used by supervisors and employees of the district for district-related approved purchases, whereas district credit cards shall not be used for any type of personal use or for any purpose other than a district authorized purchase, and whereas it has been determined that it is in the best interest of the district to use credit cards to pay for certain district expenses under the district credit card usage procedures described in this resolution and in the district's policies and procedures manual as amended. And Supervisor SCEWCD made sure that we had a credit card provision in the manual, so that's why that reference is there. The resolution at section 3 authorizes the district to have a maximum of 5 credit cards issued to the district through the State of Florida Purchasing Card Program as administered by Bank of America for supervisor usage and employee usage for district business. Here, the credit cards will be secured or locked in the office of the treasurer for use for district authorized purchases, including occasional credit card usage supervisor or other authorized representative of the district. One credit card will be held by the district's manager, supervisor of operations. One credit card will be held by the treasurer/secretary. Each credit card will have a different number, and each credit card will have a maximum credit limit of $3,000 per card. District credit card purchases can only be made for board-approved district purchases, and all credit card purchases must be within the limits of the district's annually adopted operating budget. A district employee or supervisor may request a credit card for travel on behalf of the district if lodging or registration is not paid in advance. Each credit card purchase requires a receipt, and all receipts shall be given to the district treasurer to match with the credit card statement each month. District credit cards shall never be used for any type of personal use. That was section 3. Those are the parameters of the use of the credit card. And then section 4 is, I won't go through that word for word, but it authorizes, the district by the resolution authorizes entering into and maintaining a purchasing or credit card agreement with the state of Florida Purchasing Card Program, which is administered by Bank of America. And that's the only one that is authorized by this resolution. So at this time, that is the only bank credit card that is authorized. That's it.
Motion on the floor to accept that.
Make a motion to accept the credit card purchasing program and the policy procedures associated with it.
I'll second.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got the resolution here, and we can have it signed later tonight.
Hurricane Ian damage issues, resolution, repairs, FEMA, payments for repairs.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I have something on that one too.
Okay,
if I may.
let's do it.
Yes, sir. On that particular item, I have a resolution of the Board of Supervisors adopting, this is also something that you asked me to do at the last board meeting. It adopts the 2022 Lee County Emergency Management Joint Local Mitigation Strategy Plan. And in particular, Section 3 of this resolution is the substantive part. There are recitals that I always do to justify the board's action. It says that you have limited financial resources to fund a mitigation strategy and mitigation activities. It says that the district's waterways affect drainage and stormwater flow control throughout the surrounding region of Lee County. And it says that the district desires to participate in the 2022 Lee County Emergency Management Mitigation Strategy Plan, as the district's participation will benefit all landowners within the district as well as other landowners in the region. Those were the justifications. And then the actual operative section of the resolution is Section 3, which says that the board adopts this resolution authorizing the district's participation in the 2022 Lee County Emergency Management Joint Local Mitigation Strategy Plan. The Board of Supervisors reserves the unilateral right to withdraw the district's participation in the plan in the future upon 90 days advance written notice to Lee County, Florida. So I said that you can participate, and this authorizes that participation. It also says that you can exit that participation unilaterally if you desire in the future.
Put a motion on the floor to accept.
Resolution that was approved at the last meeting.
This is the board resolution.
Okay, we approved that at the last meeting and just signed that, after the meeting.
She's confusing any emergency management.
I don't think so. I think, Chris, this is the one that my notes anyway said I was supposed to prepare a resolution to participate in the mitigation strategy plan, and so that's what I did. I don't think they adopted the resolution though for this. I think they adopted the other one that you're talking about, but that was a different one from this one. That's my belief.
Let me look. We'll move on, now look. We can go on to the next topic and then come back.
Chief.
Make a motion.
Well, yeah,
If we make a motion and approve it,
yes, sir, I
we're,
think that
we're doing it
yes.
anyway, and if it's doubled up, then we're covered.
If we need to, we can always rescind one of the
Okay.
resolutions if they're in conflict.
I make a motion to adopt the emergency management.
I'll second that. Motion carries. Moving on,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
adoption of the budget for 23-24 budget discussion, and we're going to turn this over to you, Mr. Franklin.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. In talking with several of the supervisors concerning the adoption of the budget and the budget, excuse me, I'll say that in a better way, the budget adoption process for the district, the budget does not have to be adopted this evening, and the board has the ability to actually enter into a workshop setting where the board and Ms. Audrey, I'll get back, Ms. Audrey and Ms. Chris can present information to you so that you can formulate the parts and elements of your budget in a workshop setting. In a workshop setting, the board members can discuss between yourselves and with staff. It would not be a decision-making event, and it would also not be an event where public input is mandatory. You can allow it if you desire, but it's primarily for the board members to meet with staff and establish your budget, ask questions and have those answered so that a draft budget then can be brought back to the board for final decision-making at your August board meeting. And that's the process that I use in many of the other districts I represent. That's the process that is used, not that I use it. But
Okay, the only thing then we need to do is set a date and time, and is that necessary to set it this meeting, or can we determine that, and
Yes, sir. So you could say, if the board wants to hold a workshop, a budget workshop,
then you authorize us to pick a date and notice it and then have all that done before your next meeting.
let's do that. So we'll authorize, Mr. Pringle and Audrey to work together to set that date and time and location, probably be here. I just have to clear faster.
Okay.
Okay?
We'll do that with the supervisors and get that done.
We need a motion on the floor.
Yes, sir, you do.
I make a motion that we move forward with the, budget, resolution workshop.
I second the motion.
Motion carries. Okay, next item is culvert cleaning. Turns out that Vacuum Dig's name has been mentioned here, so I'm gonna turn this over to Audrey. Yes, we did.
No.
We're gonna
No,
schedule the
we're
workshop.
going to
Oh,
schedule.
no, Chris, we're going to schedule it. Audrey and Mr. Pringle will work out the dates and the time.
Yes. So, we were blessed to receive a bid from Vacuum Dig. Is the name of the company. They're locally owned. They're in Fort Myers. It's a pretty large operation, and, it looks like they would be able to, take care of all of the culverts in our district within 3 to 5 days. Completing, and also including a sump at the bottom of each exiting culvert, 2 to 3 inches below, and doubling the diameter of that pipe, whichever one they're working with, in length exiting out to allow for the sediment and, make sure that the water doesn't flow backwards into the culvert. So I did find this. That's the bid that they had given us, and it looks like it's gonna cost us about $3,600 per day, but they should be able to get this done within 3 to 5 days. They are gonna start, I think, Monday. Next is the 24th of this month, and at the end of the day, they are gonna be calling me to, discuss the progress and what they've done, and I'll be on the district to, inspect that which was done, the streets that are involved in that, at that time.
We had bids previously, number one from Sewer Viewer and one other company, and they were in the neighborhood of $300 per culvert pipe. So this is quite a savings if it all works out. So we're going to move forward with it, and we're gonna monitor it on a daily basis to make sure they're in compliance. If they're not, we have the ability to shut it down and discontinue their service. So that's what where we're at with that. We've seen their work in other locations, and they've done quality work there. It's just that we don't, we need to see what they do here. Our pipes haven't been cleaned in a number of years, and they're quite full in some cases. We also have a lot of new construction out here, and those pipes don't need hardly anything done. So we'll have to see how they move along, and whether they pick the shortest street we have to begin with.
Well, they were very open, and whenever I had questions, they were very, willing and flexible to make sure that we're going to get what we need. And when I told her what we were requiring with the sump, she still said the bid would not change, that the price is the price, so I'm happy about that.
We're going to start at the front of the subdivision by the railroad track, meaning that I guess the first road is going to be Catskill probably.
I can make that request with them.
I'm just saying, because those were the flooding streets anyway. If they do Catskill, I think it's Papillion, Benson, Lucy,
And Busy Bee.
and Busy Bee. So those streets start to get considerably longer.
Audrey, are you open for questions? Okay, on this?
Go ahead.
All right, so when I read these numbers, I just want to verify that they toured the subdivision, they drove around. And
Yes.
They saw all the streets going north, all the streets going south.
Yes, they did.
And they see that all the curb breaks for each home, and each one has a pipe.
They went to our subdivision, they were informed that there are 15 streets on the left, 6 streets on the right, exiting, no outlets from Strike Lane. Once you come into the district on Strike Lane, and you pass the red sign, you're in our district, every street on the left, every street on the right, and including Strike Lane. Their guy came out, his name is Chris, and then I spoke with Stacy, who was the woman who drew up the bid based on what Chris had observed. And they came to our district, and they know what they're in for.
Okay, because Chris told me recently there's around 850 line items of, in the tax record. So let's assume it's 850, whether it's a house or a piece of property, there's a culvert there. So at the rate they're doing this, they're getting 5 days, they think they can get 850 pipes cleaned out?
They have humongous trucks with the vacuum at the end of the truck that can just go over the area, I guess,
So my question from an engineering perspective is, if that has so much force, are those plastic pipes going to withstand the, I don't know how they're going to connect to those pipes.
They go
They
through the pipe.
hydrojet.
Oh, they go through, it's
They
a
don't,
hydrojet.
they don't.
Okay.
Hydrojetting them.
They're like a big vacuum cleaner, they go through it. So,
Okay.
I've never seen one work, Mr. Edenfield may have, but I've never seen one work, I don't know how they operate.
But that
That
was one
sounds
of the.
great, I'm not questioning it, I just want to make sure that we don't, in 5 days,
Well-
they've done like, 1/3 of the subdivision.
They know that I'm going to look at what they've done after day one. And they're going to confer with me regarding the work that was done. And at any given time, we can say no.
So let me understand, there's 5 days, 8 hours a day,
Mhm,
that's 40 hours.
mhm.
Divide that by 850 culverts.
They get paid hourly.
Hmm?
They get paid hourly.
They get paid out.
I
hourly.
understand, but we don't know how many hours it's gonna take them.
Based on his surveying of our district, he said that he would be able to get this done within 3 to 5 days.
Okay, 5 days, 8 hours a day, that's 40 hours. 850 culverts, that's 2 minutes, that's about 3 minutes a culvert.
Okay.
I don't think they can move the
I
truck
don't
that
think
fast.
that is.
Well, we're gonna find out what we're in for.
Well.
Talk to me.
Sign an agreement?
So
I would like,
let's have word with it.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Can I see the agreement Because what's important to me is that we have language in the agreement that authorizes us to terminate the agreement unilaterally, just in case it is not going as anticipated, so that we can terminate, cancel.
Yeah, what I'm trying to prevent is us getting in an agreement and there's change order language in there and we're stuck in perpetual motion that they're doing a good job, but it's just taking a lot longer and what appears to be a $25,000-$30,000 clean out based on what you're telling me, for the entire subdivision ends up being $100,000 clean out.
I see what you're saying.
You know, if you guys do remember, it was 3 years ago, we got into this issue with the sweeper man, and he did basically 4 roads that didn't have a lot of houses on them at the time, and our bill was somewhere around $10,000, and then documentation showed they didn't clean any of them. So they'd been doing that previous years from that and talking to residents out here doing the same kind of work they've been doing. So we haven't really cleaned our culvert pipes in a lot of years. And so this is all pretty new to, I mean, this board's never had to contend with this. This is new to us. We like to believe in miracles and that some grace comes along, but Mr. Pringle, you got to take a look at that and protect us, and we'll move forward.
Well, the best protection is to meet them there when they start, right? So are they starting on Monday,
Tentatively the 24th.
the 24th on Catskill?
Well,
So I will be there,
The
because,
specific street, I didn't tell them where to stop.
yeah, I wouldn't wait till the end of the day to check their work, that's all.
Yes, sir. Oh, no, you won't.
No.
You're our engineer.
I tagged you on the emails, I believe, both of you, and I can re-forward that to you guys, and you can take a look at that, and then make sure that the appropriate language and protection is in there, so I will make sure you have that.
So I'm gonna make a suggestion that we make a motion to tentatively approve, they can start on the 24th if Ron, from an engineering perspective, asks them the right technical questions, and Richard looks at the contract for this work, and then we have language there at the end of the day. If they're saying it's $3,600 at the end of the day, and we're not happy, they get paid $3,600, thank you very much.
And see you later.
Yeah, onward and, you know,
Fair enough.
okay?
Yep, absolutely.
You putting a motion on the floor?
So I make a motion for whatever I just said, yeah.
I'll second that.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, and while we're at that point, I meant to bring it up along the way, but we do have in our budget for doing the ditch and the surrounding, all the roads, the trimming and everything that we have been doing 2 times a year. The only thing was we had Hurricane Ian hit this year. We weren't sure where our funds and money was going, so we chose to put that off 6 months ago. Now, our roads are getting heavily overgrown. Our ditches are getting hung by the pepper trees, and our canal system is getting about the same. So I would like to ask the board to support putting, allowing our tree service that we have hired in the past to move forward, staying within the confines of the budget to do that work. It's in the budget. I don't know whether it really requires a motion or not, but let's put a motion on the floor so we have the support of the entire board.
Since we had a bid from Gerald, at the beginning of the fiscal year, is that terms of is that the terms you're following for now, or do you have different terms?
We're following the same terms, staying within the money that was allotted to do the work.
Okay, so for everybody's purposes, that was two trimmings for the year at $36,000, I believe, per trimming, for a total of $72,000.
That would be, no, that's more than what we have here. 67 was what we have in the budget. And that's what I'm talking about.
I was referring back to Gerald's proposal. So, okay.
So anyway, that's where we're at, Chris. We've got it within the money that we've allotted to do that. Are you there?
Yeah, I was just wanting to mention a dollar amount for the other members of the board to have an understanding what you're talking, how much of the money you're talking about.
Well, I believe the number was, I can tell you right here, I've got it in front of me. 67,000 is what we're asking to approve.
The real question is Gerald's Tree Service gonna complete the entire perimeter canals, all the areas supposed to trim in that budget?
Are you asking?
I'm asking, I don't know, I'm asking that question.
I have spoken with him. He's agreed to do it within the confines of the budget money that we allotted to do it.
Okay. So now I expect that Audrey and Ron are gonna make sure you inspect that it's cut back to what you want. Okay.
He also agreed, which he hasn't done in the past, the filtering ponds up front, trim every tree in the filtering ponds around the sign, and those scraggly trees at the very front, when you first come over the railroad track, have never trimmed those, to cut those back, and to improve the looks of the subdivision when you come into it. He said, I'll start there just to show you I'm doing it, so.
Doing herbicides.
He doesn't do herbicides. That's a second budget, but part of it is the herbicide we need to have on the Stillwell Canal, and we're gonna have to let a contract for doing that. We can do that next month.
So, Mr. Chairman, so then the Gerald's Tree Service work will be a part of the agreement that we have with Gerald's Tree Service now as an amendment to that agreement? Is that what I'm understanding?
Or because he's under contract, you tell him just go do the work, which, that's the question.
The only thing that's the question is the amount of money we're gonna pay him, which we have in the budget, $67,000. That's the cap, no more than that. I'm gonna talk with him and see if we can save a little bit of money there before we actually do it, but I'm asking you to approve the $67,000 that we have.
Good change order to his existing contract.
That's what I'm thinking that you're talking about doing, is you have a contract with Gerald's Tree Service.
That's correct.
And this is a change in the scope of work, for that agreement to add this additional work for additional compensation.
He's not getting additional compensation. He's getting the same amount. He's doing the extra work.
Under the same contract?
Under the same agreement.
Okay. All right,
So we just need to authorize to start doing the work now.
We need to authorize this.
You're amending the scope of work, you're not amending the money.
Correct.
Okay. We just need to make sure we get that straight.
The prior year, he would pay $25,700 per cleaning of the canal. And last year we did increase that to allow for some, for lack of better word. But the past, and the contracts, the prior contracts were for $25,700 twice a year. And then $15,000 for the trimming of the roadways.
What was your total amount, Chris?
For the cleaning of the canals, we did 51.4
Chris.
and 15
Chris.
for the trimming of the.
We don't, it's immaterial what the canals were, the roads were, anything else was. There's one single total. He's doing everything this time under one budgeted agreement. So just total it up.
I'm only referring back to what Richard said as far as referencing back to the prior contract. That was the terms of the prior contract.
I didn't get the numbers.
I didn't get the numbers. I heard 25.
51,400.
How much?
51,400.
So now he's 16,000 higher in the budget. So he's really gonna get paid for this extra scope of work, so nothing's changed.
It was 51.4 plus
There's
15.
20, 21,
Plus 15.
22, right there.
51,400 plus 15. That brings it to
Right there, right there, right
66,400.
there.
$66,000.
And then, in the budget that we approved, we did increase it somewhat.
Right.
But we never got a contract for that increased amount, so.
Okay, actually, Chris, in the budget that I'm holding in front of me right now, which the year 2021, it was 68,800. In the year 2021-22, it was 67,200. In the year 22-23, it was 67,000. It's gone down a little bit each year, according to this.
What are you looking at?
The GL worksheet, Scott.
So, Mr.
That, on the GL worksheet, Gerald, that is other things in there for Gerald, other than, that, because he had some other projects that he had done previously in those years. You remember he took down those trees that were along the.
I remember that was a $2,000 expenditure. Who, by the way, did the clean out on the Stillwell Canal at the weir a couple of years ago? It was a quite large sum of money.
It's $24,000.
It was $24,000. You remember who did that? That was my first year on the board.
That would have been Thrasher.
Okay.
So I was just referencing back to Richard's comment about the contract, so I have no problem with the dollar amount you're saying. We've got the money in the budget for it, but if we're doing it under his contract, the dollar amount is different. You need to amend the contract.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know, Richard, tell us.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think what Chris is talking about is your budget line item appears to be a $67,000 number. That's the number that we have discussed. But the contract is a separate document, a separate number, and seems like from what Chris is saying, it's at a lower number.
What the differences being is that in the scope of work, he is offering a lot more work than what he was doing. He's doing it all at one time in one event. The growth and stuff is significantly more than what he would have contended with in the past. Last year in his scope of work, Lewis tree trimming came into our subdivision under a contract with FP&L and cleaned out a lot of things he didn't have to do. So
I think the contract should be amended to have the updated scope of work, and if there is an adjustment in the price from the current contract price, it sounds like from what Chris is saying that there may need to be an adjustment in the contract price. It would be to an amount that is not to exceed the budgeted
that's what I was
item.
asking for.
Yes, sir, the budgeted item would be the cap or the maximum.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the contract amendment, would be to change the scope of work and to change the price paid for that scope of work.
Do you have a copy of the contract?
Not with me, but I believe I have one that I prepared. I can't remember if it's the current one or not, but yes, sir, we can get that straight.
I'm gonna make a suggestion. We stick with the original contract, expand the scope of work. If he agrees to it on the current pricing of $51,000, that's that contract, let him go do the work. If he eventually comes back and says, it's too much, I need a little bit more money, we have in the budget $16,000, we can do a change order during his work. But let's see what he gets done for the current contract amount with his verbal agreement of the expanded scope he's given to Chairman Bradford. As opposed to all this back and forth about let's expand the contract, why expand the contract with the money we have? Let him go do the contract with the money that he's supposed to get, and then do a change order with him based on what he gets accomplished. 80% is done, They say, look, I need some more money for the last 20% of all the cleaning. Okay, we'll look at our budget. Is 10,000 more enough for you? Maybe he agrees to it, we still save money.
And the current contract price is 50,
I don't know what it is, I'm gonna have to, whatever you guys are telling me.
51.4.
How much?
51,400.
okay. So then we're back to an amendment of the scope of work.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, are you authorizing me to raise that if necessary, or what's the backup on this?
If we need to make a motion that we do a change order for the existing contract, we would do that, but nothing's would ever exceed the cap of the amount of money that's in the budget, which is the 67.2 or whatever.
Go ahead, Greg.
The current contract says that he is not to exceed $66,400 annually. And then the scope that it provides is semi-annual trimming, I can't see whether, that's the only thing it says. So the contract itself is not to exceed 66.4.
So it's the current contract.
So there, we're talking $1,000 difference. So basically, we need to get him to agree to expand the scope in more detail and specificity to what the existing 66,000 change, and we have 1,000 extra if we have to go up. And that's it. 66,000 for two trimming.
33 for trimming.
Correct.
But he's doing the whole year's project at one time.
Which actually may be more cost effective for him as well.
It probably is.
And what was the
Just tell me
amount?
where you want me to, what direction you want me to go.
66.7 is the current contract.
Okay.
67.4.
Or 66.4.
66.4.
Which is 51.4 plus 15.
51.4 plus 15.
And the 15 was for what, Chris?
That was the trimming the road.
Okay.
But it doesn't really say that in the contract. I mean, it doesn't say that in the contract.
Well, I think we need to amend the contract with a new scope of work with specificity, and Ron, you look at it, and Audrey, you double check everything.
And we'll verify that the total not to exceed price is $66,400.
Correct.
We can put all that in the amendment.
Correct.
That it includes the scope. So it takes action by the board, Mr. Chairman, to authorize that contract amendment to be done to change the scope of work with Gerald's Tree Service for
What I would
price.
like to make sure of in that, I have spoke with him in detail about making sure what he's covering. Now, I'm not talking about the canals. I'm talking about the front end. I know what we're adding to what he wasn't doing. So I want to make sure that, you know, he's agreed to do all of that. I want to make sure that all of that stays in our agreement.
Could you send us a list?
Yeah, whatever you talked about.
What you talked about? I mean, I could guess.
That is, you know, I got to tell you something. I don't know how we write a list of which trees he trims, how much he trims. Now, what we actually have done, and we have said, is that on the right-hand side of most roads is the power line. That's our border. On the left side, you take a measurement from the power line to on the other side of the road. You make both sides the same. Where he wasn't doing that years ago. He was trimming the 6 inches and leaving the rest. But now, on even the perimeter roads, he has to make sure he cuts back to the property lines, which there's, okay, so.
And most of your right-of-ways are 60 feet wide, if I remember
So
correctly.
30 in each side.
Yeah, so if you go from what you know is the on one side is the power line edge of the right-of-way and measure 60 feet across, that should be the other.
Yeah, but what he also agreed was that he would take out and kill all of the invasive trees that are in our ditches and stuff that before he wasn't doing. He was trimming them, and we were paying him to take them out the next year, or trim them again the next year. This time, remove them or kill them, whichever way you go about doing it.
okay?
Both sides of the perimeter canal?
Both sides of the perimeter canal. What he's not going to do is where before he was getting in and trimming all the way back to the far property lines where the neighbor's property, our neighboring subdivision started. We talked about that and we decided that we wanted to have that sanctuary left for the animals and the birds and the things where they're getting run off from everything else. So we're gonna leave everything we can leave except the invasive plants and where he needs to cut enough down near the water to make the flow correct, okay? He also told me I have to trim a little bit more than that because my men have to walk there, okay? So given what he has to do is what we want him to do, but he also agreed to take out all the invasive plants, whatever they happen to be, okay? So.
Then at the entrance, just general?
The entrance, no, it's not general. He said, I will highly manicure the trees in the front, all of them in the filtering pond, and not in the filtering pond, which is the naturally environment pond that Mr. Brown takes care of, but on the other side of the road.
Right.
All of the sable palms, all of the oak trees, all of the trees there that are overgrown, and we have palm trees that people cannot see out of the side roads when they pull up. Those trees may need to be removed at the intersections.
So to be sure, what I've got is kill exotics within the right-of-way, trim the full 60 foot of the right-of-way, exotics only on the outside of the perimeter, manicure the entrance, and trim trees in the filter marsh.
No, not in, oh, okay,
In
the
in
filtering
treatment-
ponds.
The treatment, yeah, on the north side.
On the north side.
Two ponds on the north side, not the one.
But any of the
south
trees
side.
hanging over the fence on the other side, he needs to trim back so they're not overgrowing the road.
Okay.
Not to go into that pond area, but just to make sure any of the trees along the edgeway,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something, I'm trying to remember what it was off the top of my head. Oh, this goes to another day. So let's pass this, and
Okay.
I'm just gonna bring it up for a moment, and then we'll get out of
Have
here.
a good night.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming.
And that's all for the not to exceed price of the $66,400.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I think Mr. Edenfield and I can probably get a written scope of work pretty close to what.
Can we look forward to that tomorrow?
We'd like, I think we want him to start next week, right? Gerald,
Yes, he's ready to start if we get the approval.
FEMA, HMDP, scope, we'll get it done.
Okay.
So you,
Well, let's not use the FEMA scope.
okay, all right, and you'll want to see it again.
Pardon?
Copy of the latest bill contract.
Okay. Motion on the floor?
A motion that we do everything we just said to make this work with Gerald Street Services. And the current contract.
At a
And
not
the
to
expanded
exceed price
scope
of
of work.
$66,400.
Exactly.
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed.
That number's not to be publicized yet, okay?
Not-
Okay.
not to exceed.
There's another little underlying thing there, so don't talk to anybody about the price. That goes for you guys.
It's on the tape.
Huh? I know that.
He's
I know
kidding.
that. Okay. All right.
Motion is second.
It's already passed.
I don't, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, you made the motion?
I made the motion.
Who seconded?
No, I take that back.
I made the
Mr. Solution,
I
Okay,
second.
all right.
and I
Agreed. Okay, so, got it?
There's just three of them.
Okay, we're down to public input. Nobody's allowed to say anything.
3 sec, you made me a little nervous about the damage they could do cleaning the culverts, so these are very expensive culverts with very expensive pavers on top, so
with all due respect, they're not gonna damage the culvert pipes.
water.
It's a vacuum that goes through the inside.
Okay.
The question was brought up. I know what I've seen the work. I'm just gonna reassure you that the equipment they use should not damage a single culvert pipe.
Well, I will try to be there, and I will be laying on my driveway.
Would you, I'll tell you what, I'd feel better if you would just follow them through the whole subdivision.
Well, maybe.
Okay, we won't have them start on your street, we'll have them go to another one. Then you'll have to follow them. Thank you very much, David, but yes, we're glad you're gonna be looking at that.
Well, if they ruin, yours is the first property, so if they ruin yours, they're coming to mine.
Mine's the first property?
On Catskill.
No, it isn't. The one on the right, isn't that house that's sitting in
Well,
the
on the
swamp
left.
there?
The first one on the left.
Okay.
We'll tell them if they wanna go to Okay, moving on. Let's
Moving on, okay.
Go on to page 7.
That was your 3 minutes. Anybody else got a question while we're here? You guys were so
No.
generous to come and stay, so. Supervisor comments.
Any supervisor comments? No, moving on. Hammer down.
Before I do this next one, any last statements? Motion to adjourn.
Second the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Go on to page 7.